Well, welcome everybody to the New Tracks Meetup. Thanks so much for coming. Hope you come back often. Hope you tell your friends about us and have them join us. Ed has an announcement that he'd like to make at the front end of this show. So Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let me All right. I got everything else figured out, but I haven't figured out the, there we go, gallery view. Had the wrong view up, sorry about that. Yes, I'm basically asking for help. It's one of those things of, in order to make something, making a show like this great and even greater, we need to spread out the small little details. I would like it to have it so we can turn around and for myself, right now it's only me and TC running the show. Right now TC is feeling ill, so it's just me, myself, and I at this point. But I would like to have it a little bit deeper, so can rotate between people and all that. And if we need to, take a vacation every now and then. But we're also thinking of there are other things that are available. Someone help with the website, so with social media. I mean, just reach out and we'll give you what job you are interested in and all that. And we can go from there. And it's one of those things of this show has gotten to the point where it's no longer, just two people. It has gotten larger to the point where we need a little bit of help. And it's more the merrier. Just got a direct message from Floyd. Send an email to Jim, jimkello1@gmail.com. And we'll talk about that if you stay after the show meeting and all that. We can discuss this more also. And so that's all I have. It's like the more we can have people get together and people who love this show to help it spread out and make it even better. All right, we'll go back to you, Jim. And wait, I need to unmute you first. No, wait a second, wrong one. Let's keep on moving around. There you go, Jim. Oh, no, you unmuted yourself again.
How's that?
Yes.
Ed, if you could check with Nick Santos, he says he cannot log in for some reason. I sent him the link that I used, but you might want to check to make sure he can log in.
Okay.
So next announcement is about our website. It's called newtracksmodeling.com. And if you'll go on it and register, then you'll get notices that you can attend the other meetings that we have and the other shows as we produce them. Our train show is March the 20th, 21st. We've got 3 great sponsors: Great Scale Model Train Show in Timonium, Maryland, MRH Media LLC, Joe Fugate's company, and Soundtracks. And we're really proud to have those 3 sponsors, and we appreciate their support. Ed, if you could run their videos, please.
The New Tracks Virtual Train Show is sponsored by the Great Scale Model Train Show at the Maryland State Fairgrounds in Timonium, Maryland. At over 3.5 acres, we host hundreds of vendors, dozens of operating layouts, and thousands of attendees. Manufacturers, dealers, and individual sellers display, demonstrate, and sell products and services. Layouts inspire attendees, and free clinics impart how-tos and tips for every skill level. Learn more at www.gsmts.com.
We founded MRH Media in 2008 with the announcement of our top quality, ad-supported, free, digital-only magazine for the hobby. Now remember, the iPhone was barely a year old at this point, and the tablet would not be invented for another 2 years yet. Here in 2021, our vision has come true. Welcome to model railroading via the internet. MRH Media is delighted to be a sponsor of the New Tracks virtual train show.
From our humble beginnings in 1990, Soundtracks has grown to be an industry leader in model railroad sound and technology. We offer a wide range of sounds to fit any era and any modeling interest. Our products boast innovative features developed alongside real railroaders to improve your modeling experience. We are proud to say that all of our decoders are made right here in the USA and thoroughly tested to ensure reliable operation every time. Be sure to visit soundtracks.com and use promo code NTMSHIP to get free shipping on your order, or visit your local retailer today.
So I don't know what happened to those videos, Ed, but there was all jarbled toward the end of it. Next, I'd like to introduce Chris Korst to talk about our My Build section, which the next one is February the 27th. Chris? Ed, you're on the screen.
Oh, Chris, are you there? I do not see Chris in the layout.
Okay, then let me talk about it. February the 27th is our next My Build. If you could put it on me at least, Ed. And Chris, of course, is the moderator of that section. If you would let Chris or me know that you'd like to be on that show, then we'll make sure that you have time. It's been popular in the past, and we're looking forward to seeing a lot of what you all are working on. Whether it's a completed model or something that you just started or something that you're halfway through. We'd still like to hear about it and see what you're building. So that'll be on February the 27th. Greg, do you want to talk about what you and Chris are going to be starting on your build on March the 3rd?
Yeah, I can go ahead and just give a brief overview of it. Chris Korst at Conowingo Models and I are partnering up starting in March for a series of build presentations on one of his structures. The structure is called the Gray Street House, but he's created a modified version of it that will be built as a company house in a mining company or steel mill. And he'll be selling them with the added parts that come to it, which include a porch and a back stoop and a foundation. If you go to Conowingo Models and look for the kit, you can pick one up and be ready to start building it with us. We'll start presenting the kit and how we're building it on March 3rd.
Well, that's great. I hope everybody will want to build along with Greg. He's an excellent builder, as you all know. And I'm really looking forward to this series because this is something different for us. It'll be the first time that we've tried something like this on the show. It won't be a build only one night. It'll be in increments of 15 minutes. And Greg will do a little bit, show you how he did it, talk about how he did it, problems you may run into while you're building it. And then we'll go to step 2 and so forth. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn something from it. And I hope that you'll improve your modeling by seeing it. Bob Farquhar and Dale Rush of Blair Line are going to do the same thing with a different project. So Bob, if you'd like to talk about that a minute.
Yeah, I will. This is similar to what Greg and Chris are going to be doing. This is going to be starting on April 17th, another structure build. Going to be done on a weekly basis. I'm going to share a screen here. There's the building we're going to be doing is the Blair Line General Store building. And we have it, it's available in N scale, HO scale, and O scale. And unfortunately, there's no S scale on that one. But anyway, on the end of March, I'm going to do a short presentation on what tools you should have available. And if you're going to do changes for the kit, like you want to do a different roof, what to get, and so on. So on the 17th of April, we're going to be starting to build on that one. Again, like Chris and Greg are doing 15-minute segments of, and ideas, techniques, and so on during the build. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope I hope everybody likes these. We're going to try them for a while and see what the response is and so forth. But the manufacturers are very supportive of us. Blair Line is giving a super discount on the kits, including free shipping in the U.S. And couldn't have been nicer when we talked the other night. So I hope that you'll do that. I hope you'll help Chris and Greg with their build by following along with theirs and getting the kit and building it. And we'll see how this goes, whether we continue it or not. I have one coming up with Bar Mills. It'll be about as close to a scratch build that we'll be able to do, I'm afraid, unless we actually do a scratch build one later on. But this one will be, it'll be different. It won't be a kit, although it is a kit. It has a lot of parts to it, but it's really not a kit. There aren't any instructions with it. So you can build anything you want to, as long as the pieces are there in the kit for you to build with. So it'll be kind of up to you to figure out what it is that you'd like to build. What does that structure look like that you'd like to have on your model railroad that you don't have right now? And if you can find a photo of it and draw a scaled version of it, and then build the kit, that's as close to scratch building as you'll ever get without actually scratch building the model. So I hope you enjoy that one. That'll be coming up soon. Right now, I'd like to turn to Paul Thompson for his quick tips of the evening.
Great, thank you, Jim. I'll just share screen here. And what I was looking at here is a number of times people will be replacing, this won't, what will it not do here? Oh, hold on, I got the wrong thing up. Let me shrink this somehow. There we go, okay. A lot of people are replacing plastic wheels in trucks with steel wheels. And one of the things I'd like to point out is not all axles are the same length, so that if you put the truck back together with the new wheels and it somehow is either floppy or it runs very, very stiffly, it could be your axle length. And what I've tried to do here is show both of these. I tried to get right in the middle. The outside of the axles are on the same mark. And as you can see, the one on the right has a shorter axle.
Hey, Paul, your
Yes.
screen share is still not sharing.
Oh, now that's odd. Why is it not? Let me try this again. Okay. My screen share isn't. I don't get this.
Don't forget, you have to pick the screen that you want to share.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing. All right. Does that show?
No.
No.
For some reason, it's not.
Paul, I'll tell you what.
I'm getting it up on my screen.
Why don't we pick this up next time, because we've got a full show tonight.
Yep, that's fine. Fine with me,
okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So moving right along, I'd like to talk to Martin Breckfield, who's an MMR, who talks to us about scratch building. And Martin is also the editor of O-Scale Trains for White River. So Martin, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jim. Let's see if I can get my slides to work now. Hey, okay. Hey, what do you know? Slideshow. From current slide. How we doing?
Good.
We got the slides?
Yes.
Looks like it.
Outstanding. I'm actually figuring out how to do this without too much pain. Okay, so this is a change from what I was doing, which was all structures, thanks to Jim's commentary last week about building kits, instructions. I have a lot of bones to pick with instructions over the years, but I pulled out something a little different. And this is a Simpson kit for a 36-foot gondola. And they made kits for all kinds of cars. And it's a fairly basic kit. It's obviously, that box has obviously seen a few decades of storage in someone's basement other than mine. It's only been in my basement for probably 5 years. But I got tired of looking at the box, so I thought, how painful could it be? What could possibly go wrong? Well, there are your instructions. Or that's the front page. Assembly instructions. You got 8 steps. Things like flip the car over and install your own deck, or install your deck. Install miscellaneous hardware. That's really not very helpful, to be honest. Presumes a certain amount of I know where everything goes or belongs or should go, or where I think it belongs at least. And you look at the hardware list and you find Grant Line, Valley Car Works, and Chemtron. So you know how old this kit is already. It's half as old as me, at least. That's or half as old as dirt. I'm not sure which is older. And you flip the page over, and there's what you get: a template for a 36-foot car or a 40-foot car, and clearly labeled, right? 36, 40. That's helpful. But you could miss it, but you won't miss it because the length of the wood tells you what you're doing. It's nice to have a template. Lays this out. Interestingly enough, that spacing right there between those two actually almost fits a KD coupler box. So you can actually drive your screws right into the wood without having to worry about it too much. There's what you get in the kit. That's it. A bunch of wood and more wood. You got the stakes, the ends, the sides of the car, the upright sides, the decking, needle beams. That's it. You're on your own for the rest. So it's a bit of a challenge, but all the wood goes together rather nicely, and it's nice looking wood. I wish all kits came with this pretty a wood. It's almost a shame to paint the car, but paint it I will. So you just put together the parts. So here's where you start putting in parts that aren't in the kit. You need car bolsters for your mounting your trucks. Those are actually, I produce those myself, but anything will work that you like. Some people just put a piece of wood in. I just happen to have these in resin, and I cast probably 50 of them in the past week. Drill and tap those for 440 screws. You're good to go. Do remember to drill and tap them before you glue them in place. That makes it a little more complicated if you glue them in place first. Words of experience. I've done it. I got through it. I learned the hard way. Don't do that again. Flip it over. It's actually pretty wood. I can't, I really debated not painting this car. I thought, gosh, that would, it's going to take paint and stain though nicely eventually though. So it won't matter, I guess. So you build the sides, and you can begin to see we've got a lot of nut, bolt, and washer castings. I'm not shy about using nut, bolt, and washer castings everywhere I can. Didn't put them on the inside on this particular car because I'm just going to fill it up with a load later and not worry about it. But stamped metal, some of these are steel, tin, some are brass. They're from, I I believe, US Hobbies, which tells you how old those are too. But there's lots of replacements and other possibilities out there. Grantline comes to mind immediately. Flip the car back over, put in the queen posts. I think I used 6-inch, 5-inch or 6-inch ones. I don't remember now. I vary that. The instructions probably called for something. I'm not sure I really cared at this point. Instructions, I always joke with people, instructions are the first thing you throw away when you open the kit. And then you go off and build the kit the right way. That's probably not true for most people. I've been known to do it. I've actually been known to read the instructions occasionally. I've been known to throw away the kit too. And pull it back out of the trash can and rebuild it anyhow. So here's the fun trick, putting in truss rods. Okay, this stuff in here is not monofilament. That is surgical silk, number 0 surgical silk. That is braided over a core of braided silk. If you can break that between your hands, you'll probably end up at the emergency room because it's going to cut right through your skin. It is incredibly difficult to break. This is a single piece of that silk as well. So it starts, I don't know which end, it either started here, it's one of the 4 corners. It started somewhere, it's anchored in place by a nut, bolt, and washer casting. So I drill a hole, I don't know, 5-6 thousandths bigger than the nut, bolt, and washer casting. Thread the silk through, anchor it with CA with the bolt casting. So this actually is kind of functional. It goes under the bolster, over the needle beam, put on the turnbuckle. Don't forget to put the turnbuckle on, because you're going to go out the other side, put another nut, bolt, and washer casting at this end, and now you can't put the turnbuckle on unless you cut it in half and glue it back together somewhere here in the middle. And yes, I've done that twice. No fun. So you go back and forth 4 times. Anchor it, pulling it tight. It's not up on the queen post yet. It's under tension right now. We'll lift it up and put it under real tension, so these will be functional actually to a point later. I didn't bother running a train line through it. I just had some brass air hoses. This is a union joint I make out of brass tubing with some 33 thousandths brass wire. And I just drilled a hole into the bolster and just stuck it in there. It's good enough for this car and to illustrate building this thing. This is a Grantline. I'm pretty sure it's a Grantline casting. So you can see the sides. Lots of added things. So stirrup steps. Little corner pieces. Well, those corner pieces, we'll see what those are in a minute. But stirrup steps, those are US Hobbies brass pieces. Or maybe they're all nation. I don't remember, but I drill those out. They're glued in place with goo and CA, and then they're drilled out again, and nut, bolt, washer castings are put in. And there's actually nut, bolt, and washer castings in all these little pieces, those aren't holes. Those are actually nut, bolt, washer castings. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's worth it. And there you can see those little brass pieces are actually polling pockets. Those are actually low bow polling pockets. The last 4 I had. I think that's a Wiseman brake wheel. I don't remember whose ratchet and pawl casting that is. I even put a truss rod across the ends to hold the ends together. Don't forget to put the turnbuckle in. It's a great way to get rid of scrap brass wire. Little piece, a little piece. I save all the little pieces of wire into Ziploc baggies. And they're all labeled 19 thousandths, 22, 25, 28, 33, 40 thousandths. And when I need a short piece, I'm reaching for one of the little baggies. I'm not looking to cut up my long pieces of wire, because getting new wire is not easy. And it's getting pricey, or pricier. Underbody, we'll go back to the underbody. I have put in a rudimentary brake system, levers. Those levers, I don't remember, they're either Berkshire Valley or they're my own resin castings. The Lever hangers are precision scale castings. I've gotten tired of making my own hangers, so I spring for the precision scale parts. They're getting pretty pricey too. Eventually, I'll probably need to go back to making my own. I put the turnbuckles in the middle, and now these truss rods are up where they belong. So this car is actually under considerable tension. You can play a tune on these. It is under a fair chunk of tension. I do eventually put a little bit of CA on all the contact points. And that tension actually, I've never had one of these break. I've never had one slip out of the ends. I have had one car twist out of plane by the tension in the truss rods. Can't adjust them now. That was a it had styrene needle beams, and apparently they gave and the whole thing twisted. These are the old AHM Casey Jones tender trucks, Fox trucks. And I thought, let's mix things up a little bit with an old car and put some Fox trucks under just for fun. And I had these, so I dropped them into place. Just a coat of maintenance gray on it. Just not a heavy coat, just kind of quick brushed on just to give it a slightly used look. And I think I may or may not be done here because I lost track of slides. Oh, there's the other end of it, the other side of it. And that is the end. I put a load into this car ultimately. Let's go back. I did put a load into this car. I just took some blue foam, some medical grade blue foam, which I happen to have scraps of in a box, and made a coal load for it, which I could bring some slides for that in the future for you. But that's it for this time. But I thought the most interesting thing here might be, that's how I make truss rod systems. They're actually semi-functional. They're a little tedious to do, but that surgical silk, I recommend that. I supply that to people when they ask for it. I have it in 3 different sizes. It's old stuff. It's on wooden spools. And finding that in that kind of condition on the old wooden spool is hard. I've looked. I don't seem to, maybe it's on eBay under collectibles, but it's an outstanding material. I've used it for lots of things. And like I said, you cannot break it. And it is, it doesn't stretch very much at all. And it's incredibly strong. So I'll stop there. And if you got questions, I'm right here.
Just a comment, Martin. Surgical silk on spools, you're showing your age. And follow that with a question. Could you have pre-stained the deck lumber before you assembled that?
Sure. Absolutely.
That would have brought out the individual.
Yeah, I've done that in the past on other cars, and probably in a couple of weeks you'll see a different Simpson kit operation where I did something completely different with it. I had 2 of these kits, and I thought I should. Well, they're just gathering dust, so I might as well do something with them. The spools, the spools of surgical silk that was being thrown out at work. It was out in the hallway in a pile of trash, and I said to myself, you should take this, because I don't know what it's good for today, but someday you'll discover something useful for it.
That's how I got mine when a nurse's office was being folded up and headed for the dumpster.
Yep. And yeah, so I still have 1 full cardboard carton of them.
Goodness.
Yeah, so I've got probably my lifetime in the next one of surgical silk in all 3, in 0, 1, and 2 size. And I think it's I don't remember.
Well, I've never heard of using this before, Mark. Where would people like me that don't have any get some?
You can buy surgical sutures in silk. You can buy that on eBay, believe it or not. You probably can buy it on Amazon.
It's the same stuff that you're using. It's just not in the wooden spools.
Oh yeah, it's not, and it's going to be pre-cut to the length, because they make nowadays sutures come pre-cut to size.
Oh, okay. I
Yes.
got you.
So you're not going to just run off 6 feet of it, or in my case, I guess about 3 feet of it is what I use for these cars. I pull off the spool. I pull 5 times the length of the car, because I figure if I mess up the end and I have to seal the end with a little bit of CA to make it go through the turnbuckle castings, I'll have a little bit of extra thread to mess with.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate your doing this tonight, because I learned something that I'd never heard of before. So thank you so very much.
Martin,
Yeah. Who do I have?
Bill Davis.
Yes, Bill.
Hey, Martin, how did you weight the car?
That is in the load.
Okay.
There's no place to put weight in that car the way I built it, except I guess the brake casting and the trucks are plastic, so there's no weight there.
Right.
The load, I think I put a piece of lead I think I put a piece of 2 millimeter lead in the load. That's more than enough weight for that car.
Yeah, well, I've built a lot of those Simpson kits, and that was pretty nice looking wood in your kit, but I built several of them ones when he had the sugar pine in it.
Yeah.
That was a nightmare.
Yeah, well, the thing is, and this will be the point, I'll jump ahead to the future. The point will be, you've got a template and you know how big all the wood is.
Exactly.
Now you can build whatever you want.
Exactly.
So the teaching lesson here is that those instructions have value on the template side, and they have it for 36 foot and 40 foot.
Yep.
So you've got a gift right there that's going to keep giving, because underneath, you can build a flat car. Well, now you've got the basis for a boxcar, a reefer, a caboose. Keep filling in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
Once you can do this, now the doors are open for making whatever you want to build.
I agree.
Well, I think it's fantastic, guys. I can't thank you enough, Martin.
Okay.
I really learned a lot tonight.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and get myself out of that. I think I did. Yeah.
And so now we will turn to Jeff Bunza, who's going to talk to us about animation. And I believe he's going to talk about lightning. Jeff?
Okay. The local powers that be chided me the last time for not introducing myself. So my name is Jeff Bunza, and my background is in electronic system design, both in education, in teaching experience, and commercial experience. And by way of that, I taught for 6 years at a small New England technical school in Cambridge, Mass. And so I'm used to being interrupted in a presentation. So if I wander astray and don't make things clear, please interrupt, and we'll try and field the questions along the way as you completely destroy my lesson plan. So here we go. Lighting that I'm going to speak about is 99% of the time going to be speaking about the use of light emitting diodes or LEDs. I mentioned the last time that I used to use grain of wheat extensively and melted half the castings that they were inserted in. So when LEDs came around, I started using them to my great pleasure. LEDs don't really generate a lot of heat, at least the ones that we're going to be talking about using. And here's an assortment that you may already be familiar with. If you look in the upper left corner of your screen, those are not little specks of dirt. Those are actually LEDs, and I'm going to show you why they're particularly important. They are numbered 0201, 0402, 0603, and that means the dimensions of them are 0.020 inches, 0.001 inches, I'm sorry, 0.010 inches, etc. So those are actually in inches. Sometimes you see them numbered in millimeters as well, but in this case, they're inches. And all of those LEDs that you see on the screen are to scale.
So you can get an idea of the kinds that we're going to work with. And I'll probably scare the dickens out of you as we go through and I show you how to work with the small ones, which are called surface mount device SMD LEDs. All of these LEDs have the characteristic that they are spec'd to use up to 20 milliamps of current. Now, that doesn't mean that you will use 20 milliamps of current. We're going to talk about that. But note the differences in size from 12 millimeters down to very, very small. They all use 20 milliamps. Now, this one over here that's actually in the shape of a tombstone, you'll see that it's clear. You can see the inside where my cursor is. All of them look like that, and all of them have a resin casting around them. They're not glass. That's important because you need to realize that if you want a smaller LED, you can file the resin down or cut it off. So you can go and manhandle the LED, get it to the right size to insert. However, once I started using these guys up in the corner, you'll see that I kind of went amok with them and used them quite a bit. Here's another picture of them. This is not a nail on the screen. That's a straight pin. And it's pointing to an 0402 LED. And they're very common for the ones that I use. Here's an 0603. Again, these are all relative size. The larger ones that you see, like the 9823 over on the left, they are typically used, if you ever see the strips of LEDs that you can buy, we'll see a picture of that later. So they're all different sizes. And you want to realize the sizes that are available. You also could see the tweezers that I use to pick them up and manipulate them. Oh, there's one other thing you should realize too. And this is kind of a tool or a trick. These are all on painter's tape, blue painter's tape, where the sticky side is up. I originally started using double-sided tape, which is too expensive and not able to be found readily. But if you just take the blue painter's tape, put the sticky side up, get two little pieces and hold it down so that it's stretched across your workbench, it makes a great surface for these guys. Why? Because when they're this small, I actually believe that they're, some interdimensional traveler, because if you ever hit them and you knock them off of your workbench, you will never find them again. And I have actually tried early on to find them again. My wife has vacuumed my workbench area and tried to find them. We've never found them. So this is why you use the sticky tape to hold them in place. And a good rule of thumb when working with these that I'll show you in a little bit is no matter what you do with them, only one thing should move at a time. So remember that little rule of thumb. Here's a collage, and I usually use this as a handout and pass it around my clinics. Here's an 0603 lit up, and here's next to it, that's an 0402 LED. You can see the regular 5 millimeter and 3 millimeter LEDs that you probably have seen before. A lot of people use the 3 millimeter LEDs in signals, particularly in HO and larger scales. This LED that's labeled 3528 down the bottom, I'm going to show you where I use that a little bit later, but I want to show you just how bright they can be, together with the fact that when I'm working with these small ones, what I like to use for wire is 36 or 38 gauge magnet wire. Now, this is wire that has a coating on it, and in the early part of the 20th century, they used shellac, then they moved to varnish, then they moved to enamel, and now they use a different material, mostly because to remove shellac or varnish from this, when I was a kid, we used to use sandpaper and sandpaper it down, which of course went into the copper and made it brittle and easily broken. And this is so thin, you really don't want to do that. Anybody have an idea of how thin 36, 38 gauge wire is? Well, it's so thin, it's thinner than a human hair. So you're talking about some really, really thin stuff here. This, in fact, is a number 0201 LED. You can barely see it on the end of this. And I think that this is a video that I'm going to show. It's going to go by really fast. So we're going to take this little guy here, and I'm going to show you that lit up at 20 milliamps through it. Oh, I'm sorry, 10 milliamps through it, and then 1 milliamp through it. So that's the 020 LED right there. That's it lit up. And I'm turning it around. Do you notice anything as that I'm turning it, even when it has 1 milliamp in? I'm literally turning it about 200 degrees around. Anybody notice anything? Well, the thing you should have noticed is that as I turned it, you could see it brightly lit from every direction. And the reason for that is the mount for it is so tiny that no matter what direction you look at it, and the light is so bright, it's radiating through the resin that's surrounding the LED mount. So you literally have something that's about a fraction of the size of an industrial light bulb in HO scale that lights up in 360 degrees. So that property is going to be really important later on when I give you some other examples. They also come in strips, and people lighting their layout room now are using these more and more, and they come in different sizes, but you'll notice that these are in groups of 3 always, no matter what the size. And this group of 3 here has a little resistor that cuts down the 12 volts, because these are typically 12 volt strips. And it cuts down the 12 volts so it lights up these 3 LEDs together. And you can cut it right in the middle here to size it as long as you want. So if you have a DC layout and you've got a car that you want to line up, you can actually use these flat against the ceiling of your car with 12 volts DC or less, and you'll actually have a nice even distribution of light. These larger ones up here are incredibly bright, and I don't recommend them for indoor model lighting, but they can be used in lots of different ways. But these smaller ones are very, very bright and very, very useful. Now, you notice that a lot of these are all white. And I've gotten a lot of questions about, I'm going to buy a bunch of LEDs, and they're telling me that they're cool white or warm white or daylight white or sunny white. Well, all of those names are garbage. They're all made up by some marketing guy, and they don't really mean a whole heck of a lot. So you might see things like pure white, and sometimes they mean it's right in the middle of the spectrum, and sometimes they mean they're blue. So you really need to be careful about what you're buying, not pay attention to the name that they give it. If they do label it with a 4,000, 3,000, 5,000 degree label like they do on the strips, you can probably rely more on that, but I've actually seen the case where they're not very reliable. However, I'm talking to you about white LEDs for the very simple reason. Originally, I used to buy and stock red, blue, green, yellow, and white LEDs, and discovered that that's essentially a waste of time and money. What you want to do is buy white LEDs and color them. And the best way to color them is with Tamiya acrylic paints, because they're clear. You can mix them to any color you want, and they go on very evenly on LEDs. Now remember, the LED is covered with a resin surface. So here are white LEDs covered. These on the left over here are with Tamiya clear acrylic paints. And the ones on the right, I use permanent Sharpies. And the problem with permanent Sharpies is that they don't go on quite uniformly. You have to be really careful. So the second row is where all of these LEDs are illuminated. And you can notice the distortion when you put on the Sharpie on top of the resin of the LED here. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the white LEDs I'm using here are pretty much in the middle of the spectrum. But if it turns out you use the older ones that have a kind of bluish tint to them, you want to actually put the Tamiya orange on it, and it'll make it look more like a daylight color as opposed to a blue color. And you would think, no, you want to color it with a yellow to make it look more daylight. And it turns out you sometimes get a weird effect. The other thing you could see is that sometimes you put on a dark coat and the bright light coming out of the LED is so bright that it makes that coat look very, very dim. And the way you deal with that is if you want a darker, more saturated color, simply put on another color, in this case of acrylic. I've also heard people use the kind of coloring that are used to tint stained glass, which is a very strong colorant as well, or glass surfaces. I haven't used that. I like the Tamiya. They mix well and they keep well. But that's why I buy only white LEDs now, and I color them whatever color I want. One of the things about using LEDs that people don't pay much attention to is how do you connect to them? And if you're going to use the little tiny ones that I'm talking about using, it's good to have a particular kind of wire, particularly when it's very, very small wire like 38 gauge. The coating you want to get on it, at least one of them is called solderon. The coating is made by a company called the Essex Group. And it turns out that there are a number of different vendors that are actually using the coating for wire. I've actually found coils for relays that if you take them apart and use it, they behave exactly like the solderon coating. The great reason to use it, though, is the ease at which you can remove the coating and tint it instantaneously. And a lot of the times you remember if you're first instructed on how to use a soldering iron, one of the things you don't want to do is create this big blob of solder on the soldering iron, except now. Now you want to make a nice fresh blob of solder on the end of your tip of your soldering iron. And then you take the wire that would have the insulation on it and just stick it through the blob. And it's important that you not leave it there, believe it or not. You stick it through and remove it, and lo and behold, you get a tinned end of the wire. It's absolutely trivially easy to do once you get the handle of it. And you can do it for any gauge wire that has the solderon coating on it. And you can search even on eBay for solderon coating or Essex Group, and you can find it. And it's relatively cheap for 100 feet of wire, particularly if you get 38 gauge, 36, 32 gauge, whatever you're going to use. Holding parts, as I mentioned before, is a real issue. And sticky-sided blue tape is a great way to do it. So you would position your LED on the tape, getting ready to solder it. You would strip the solder the way I just showed in the previous slide. You would lay it across the end that you want to solder. You use a little tiny bit of liquid flux, just a tiny drop. You have this and you press the wire onto the sticky tape in such a way that it's held there. Remember before I told you what you want to do is you only want to have one thing move when you handle it. And the thing you want to have move in this case is just the tip of your soldering iron. So you wet the tip of the soldering iron, you already have it, the flux on it. All you do is touch it and all of a sudden you've got this little dab of solder holding that wire on and you're done. Go and do it to the other side and then all of a sudden you've got it there. It's a great tool. And then you throw away the tape whenever you're done with it. You can also buy and build holding tools for the larger LEDs that you can get. And here's a nice one up here. This is simply a flat-nosed alligator clip. And it literally is a flat-nosed clip, copper clip. You can get them from DigiKey still. And all I put on the end of them is heat shrink tubing, melt it down so that it's flat. And now you have a coated set of tips, which is the same thing up here. And the reason you want that is you don't want to kink the wire. When you kink the wire, it tends to break. So you want to be careful about how you handle it. But you can position it in a way to get it right wherever you want it. In this case, the stripped wire is at this end, and I'm just going to solder it right there. I'll move the wire aside and put the second wire there, and the holder holds this and holds the wire in place. So all you have to do is touch and you're done. To use the smaller LEDs, you really need to use the tape, not the holder. It doesn't work nearly as well. The last thing you want to do once you get your very tiny LED connected, and this is really an easy thing to do, and it makes a big difference in handling. If you're going to route the wire, like from a headlight or a marker light through your locomotive or through a building, yes, perhaps you want to have a oil lamp on a desk lit up and you want to route the wire away and hide it, then if you want to manipulate the wire with your fingers, a really neat trick is to hold the wire separated with the LED like this, grab the other two ends of the leads over with another clip that's held just in a simple piece of brass bar. Now, the cute thing is, once you grab it like that, you pull the wire not quite taut, and all you do then is twirl the bar, and now you have a twisted pair wire lead that's much stronger, much easier to manipulate, that leads to that LED. And it's amazing how much easier it is to work once you do the twisted pair. How do you tell which end is which at the other end? Well, what I typically do is I'll make the longer one be the positive connection and the shorter one be the negative connection to the LED. And we're going to show you in a little bit why, even if you don't remember which one's which, it's not going to matter a whole lot. Always test after each major step. And the easiest way to do that is to get yourself this little tiny LED tester. And all it does is it's got, don't know if you could see it, if you have your light turned up on your screen enough, there's a row of holes here, there's a row of holes there, and you just stick, if you have the normal LED, the pins just go in here, the top is positive, the bottom is negative, as the signal is here. And if you push the test, all it's going to do is connect the 9-volt battery inside the case through a resistor to these pins. And it's approximating the current that's going to put through the pins. Now, the approximation, by the way, is terrible because it makes all kinds of assumptions about the LED that you're sticking in. In order to use these very, very thin wires, again, I used these flat connectors and I just screwed them in and I connected one to the bottom row, which is the negative, and I connected the other one to a pin that just happens to fit this top row over here. So I can move it around to connect and test against 2 milliamps, 5 milliamps, 20, 30, 50, et cetera, like that. So it's a nice little way to check your work along the way. The other way to do it is to simply get two probes and connect them to something sharp and tiny that you could literally press against the LED to check and see whether or not your connections were good. After I got tired of doing that a while, I went and built this little guy, modified it, and it works a lot better. These little tiny LEDs, some of them are marked and some of them are not marked. There's no consistency on the bottom marking of these guys, but this one's blown up enough that you can see the gold pad on both sides that you're going to solder to. And that pad actually extends up the side. And some of them actually go all the way around to the top too. So you have like a cap on the end of it going all the way around. Okay. Now, the one nice thing about using a tester like this, since it's got a resistor in the series with your battery, is that if you flip this around the wrong way and wired it up wrong, well, it's not going to light, but because of the resistor you've got in there, it's also not going to do any damage to the LED. So you can always figure out using a tester like this or a resistor connected in series through a battery, which side is positive, which side is negative with your LED. Now, I thought it'd be a good idea to show you, if you've got these really tiny LEDs, well, what good are they? What can you do with them? So this was Fred, and this was the very first try on mine attempt to try to manipulate using the LED, and I figured I would do it on the biggest piece of junk that I could find, which was an old Plasticville figure that normally would never make it to my layout. And what I simply did was take a 74 drill bit and drilled up through his leg up to about here. And if you follow the line, it comes out about here. I enlarged the hole to find the where I drilled. And I must say, the first time I did this, I'm drilling through the figure, and all of a sudden I realize I'm drilling through this guy's leg. And I get this really queasy feeling that I'm drilling through this guy's leg. And it's really kind of a strange feeling. Anyway, after you get through that, you've done a couple of dozen of these things, it disappears. But you drill to make the thread through the leg. Then you use that nice hole, and it turns out you can position the arm with the drill to drill right through the arm. And when you do so, if you then go and drill into the guy's wrist, and that was another queasy feeling guy, but if you drill through the wrist, now you have a situation where you can thread the wire through the leg, through the arm, and out, and it comes right there. Why? Because what we're going to do is we're going to replace this, and we're going to light up a lamp. This is an HO figure, Plasticville figure, Bachmann figure. We're going to cut that off, and we're going to replace that, and we're going to light it up. So after figuring out how to get the whole intersection, drilling the hole, and putting them all together, you need to go and create the glass globe for the lantern. They wind up being a number 10 glass seed bead. So you can either get your girlfriend, spouse, wife, or other person of interest to take you down to the bead store and ask for a number 10 glass seed bead. I did try a number of different ones until I arrived at that. And when I first got them, I noticed that they wouldn't fit my old 0402 LED. So I went and I got a bunch of diamond burrs and tried to open up the hole in the middle. And every time I did, the thing shattered. I really was very feeble attempt to get this hole enlarged in this tiny little bead. And then I managed to spill the vial of like 100 to 500 of these beads on my workbench. And looking through them, I suddenly realized that not all glass seed beads are made the same, and found out that some have wider holes than others. So then I searched for one that would actually fit the 0402 lens, and I got rid of the diamond burrs and never looked back. The other thing is to make the bottom base of this, I simply used a punch. I got a bunch of different punch size and found one that was about the right size for the bead, and found out that when I punched through a piece of styrene, it left this little apron on the bottom, which looked just like the bottom of a lantern. So all I did was attach it with the super glue to the glass, paint it up, and then attach it to here. And this guy has the routing through here to the arm, to the back, and it goes down here. And that little light that's right there is simply the 0402 that's lit up. And that was Fred. Now, what else can you do with these things? Well, you can make some really neat, realistic hanging lamps. And I haven't pointed it out before, but this is, what I'm talking to you is not really scale dependent. And somebody, of course, said, well, of course it is. You can't do that in N scale. And I said, well, guess what? You can. So here is a lamp over here on the right. That's an N scale lamp. And the shade is actually made by a company called Engineering. They'll actually sell you the whole lamp too. But what you do is you get a brass tube that will fit one of those wires that you attach to the LED. One. You put it through the tube with the lead and the LED hanging out the other end, and then you bend the tube. So the tube literally bends and forms around the one wire inside, which, by the way, is already insulated. And what do you do with the other wire on the other side of the LED? You solder it to the actual tube. So now you have a tube. The outer tube is conducting. You've got a wire inside it. and it can be done for any scale at all. And it works great. The neat thing about it is when you put it inside the shade, you push it up inside, depending on the size of the LED that you used and the shade size that you used. I think that these are, what are these?
Those are Tishy.
Okay, these are Tichy, and then the other one is oh gosh, what's the other one I have up here? I can't read it through my screen here. But you wind up getting these. Some of them have a pre-drilled hole, some of them don't. It's really easy to drill the hole. I typically paint these white on the bottom for the reflector and kind of an emerald green on the top. They come in all shapes and sizes. This very, very large thing here was so large I wouldn't hold my LED originally. So all I did was build a paper washer. And remember, there's no heat involved. So you just take a little piece of paper, punch it out, push a needle through it, and that becomes your stop for your LED. So these are the kinds of things you could do. This makes a great hanging lamp, by the way, over a pool table. So you can do all kinds of interesting things. Making headlights becomes incredibly easy. In this particular case, I drilled out this plastic headlight here, found out that by drilling out the headlight housing, this was cast in clear plastic, even though it was painted black. So when I drilled it out, I drilled out the entire headlight housing, glued a rather large LED in the back of it. That was one of the ones I showed you before. That was the larger one. And by drilling it out, it turned out when I put that larger LED there, because I happen to like incredibly bright headlights, it lit up the side lights as well. So that was a big advantage of doing that. And the LED is going through a very, very tiny, I think number 73 hole in the back that goes at an angle down from the back and through the boiler front here, the smoke box front. And it's glued against the back, together with another flat punch out here. And this is the original one that I did. And you can see down here in the lower left how bright that thing is. And most normal people wouldn't like it that bright, but I really loved it. When it goes around the curve, it lights up the wall as it does. I mean, it's incredibly bright. Later on, I used to use the MV headlight lenses a lot, and I still like them a lot. And one day I got the thought, well, why don't I drill out the back of it and glue in the LED in the back and see what happens? And here's what happens. It becomes an incredibly beautiful reflector. And you can play all kinds of games, coloring the LED if you want an older locomotive light with a giant reflector, or a brighter, more bluish one, like a more modern one. But these become really easy to do because you can route the wire anywhere you want. You can hide it very, very easily. And that's how bright it gets. When I showed this the first time, a person asked, well, what kind of LED do I need to use to get all these rays in the picture? And it's not a byproduct of the LED. It's actually a byproduct of the iris in your lens or in your camera. Each one of those rays that you see there is actually at the corner of the iris. And that's what generates that when you have a very, very bright light like that. There's a story behind making markers light up too, that originally I had thought I was going to figure out how to put 3 LEDs in a marker to make it light up. And that was an incredible waste of time and energy that I spent way too much time on. And the reason is very simple. LEDs are incredibly bright. So would you care to guess how you position the LED in the marker? Here you can see it coming out the back here. Anybody want to guess? Well, the answer is
backwards.
Close. The answer is you don't put it in the marker. The LED is actually flat right here. Okay? So when you turn it on, the thing you need to do is to basically caulk up the back so there's no reverse lighting here and all the light is radiating out the three lenses here. And how do you make the lenses? Well, you could do it a couple of different ways. And the first way that I did was by taking some micro clear glue. It looks like Elmer's glue, and I've actually tried Elmer's glue as well, and it works fine. Elmer's glue dries almost clear. So the first thing you do is you glue up, you open up the lenses as wide as you want, then you fill them up, and they'll dry clear like this. And the next thing you do is you take that Tamiya clear acrylic and you fill up the rest of it with the color that you want to come out. So in these in particular, they have down here red to the rear and yellow to the side. So red to the rear, yellow to the side, LED in the very back. I actually take a little bit of wood and stick it in to hold the wire in place, glue it. Then I put a little black paint all over the back of it, and then I'm done. So you light up your three lenses by not using three LEDs, by using only one LED. And it's incredibly bright. And of course you can tone it down if you think it's too bright. But it's a really, really easy way to do it, as opposed to the way I tried originally to do it. You can also
now, what's the other color? You only mentioned two.
Oh, yellow, yellow, red. Red to the rear, yellow to the side, and yellow to the front.
Gotcha. All right,
Okay?
thank you.
Now, I advise you to check with whatever railroad you're modeling, because they're not always exactly that way. And I've actually seen markers where they block out the lens to the front, so there's only two. So just check whatever your prototype is using, okay?
Jeff, I hate to do this, but I got to stop you right there, and maybe you can continue this next time.
I'm about to end.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So the things you can do that we're going to talk about the next time is actually all of these things use one LED and you just light them up. You can diffuse the LED and make it look like it's a lamp just with styrene diffuse. But you can do a lot of other things. So here's the tease for next time. Here's three red LEDs. Here's them lit up. I guarantee you they are all lit up with 20 milliamps per LED. Why are they different? That's the tease for next time. Okay? And I'll leave it there.
I'm teased. And I really do appreciate everything that you've shared with us tonight, because I learned an awful lot that I had no idea about before.
Well, next time we're going to talk about how you power LEDs and try to steer everybody away from abusing them.
Thank you so much. Well, let me turn now to our featured modeler tonight, Pete Steinmetz. He owns Dead Rail Installs. Well, I've been trying to find somebody to come on and talk about Dead Rail for an awful long time. So, Pete, I can't thank you enough for being here tonight, and I'm really looking forward to for you sharing with us information about Dead Rail. And for all of you painters out there, Pete's agreed to come back another time later and talk about his painting and his weathering. So thank you so much for doing that too, Pete.
Well, I'd like to, first of all, thank Jeff. That was a great clinic. I work with LEDs a lot and do the coloring and all that, but I sure learned a lot from him. So thanks, Jeff. Appreciate
You're very
it.
welcome.
I'm Pete Steinmetz. I own a company called Dead Rail Installs. Whoops, wrong way. Anyway, yeah, backwards. I give you a bit of background. My background, my basically career was in rechargeable batteries, and worked for a number of different companies. Was involved in the development of lithium-ion, lithium polymer technology. Spent a lot of time in China surveying factories and saw some really great factories and saw some horror shows. So I was working in OEM sales, primarily medical, and ran into a guy named Mike Fobe at a train show in Del Mar, California. Mike was working with CVP Airwire, They had just miniaturized a lot of their components so that they were suitable for going into 0 and 30 scale, for instance. And Mike said, here, try this. I ran a train around. It was pretty cool. And I kind of tucked it away. And a year later, same thing. And then unfortunately, Mike came down with mesothelioma. He still worked right up until the end. And then all of a sudden there was a big void. And a couple of guys in our Dead Rail Society group in San Diego said, well, why don't you do it? And I thought, I'm pretty busy. I don't know if I want to do this. I was thinking about, starting to think about retirement and all that. And I said, well, I'll do it part-time. Well, here I am, part-time. I work about 60 hours a week. I've developed some new products, work with Blue Rail Trains, work with CVP Airwire, Tam Valley Depot, Soundtracks, TCS, and primarily I do both installs, but I'd really like people to buy kits and do it themselves. It's not that difficult. I can get a kit out the door pretty quickly, but if you want me to do the install, my backlog is pretty long. So what I like to do is I'm going to screen share and I'm going to go through a presentation rather quickly, and then we can get into some discussion because I know people, everybody's situation is a little different. People are going to have a lot of questions. We can discuss batteries and battery safety towards the end because I know that's a big thing with people. So I'm going to share my screen and hey, dang, it works. Everybody see that?
Yep.
You can. Okay, super. Worked the first time. If you want to adjust your screen, if it's off to the side or cockeyed, you can go up to the top and you can go fit to screen. It's just a little pull-down menu. So I'm going to give a brief history of battery-powered radio control or remote control as it's getting to be. Why so long for the smaller scales, the advantages of dead rail. We're going to review some systems and let's see, PowerPoint slideshow.
It's up on top.
Yeah, I see it. Somebody was trying to call me and it kind of took all of this out. Okay, so Dead Rail Society. Bob Treat in San Diego, who's a fairly well-known G-scale modeler, did the logo for us. Come on, there we go. So it started in large scales. The G-scale guys have been doing battery power for a long time because they didn't have size limitations. I started working with the G-scale guys doing motorcycle batteries and box cars. Everything was big, wouldn't fit in the smaller scales. The PCBs got smaller. They got a lot smaller. Batteries got smaller. The guys are running lead acid at first, and then NiCad, and then nickel hydride, all of which are pretty big for what you get. When lithium polymer matured, we could do O and 30, S, HO and 3, and we're doing some stuff with N-scale now. Works with DCC and sound, no interference, operating a dead rail on a DC or DCC layout. There are some stories about guys saying, oh, you can't run that on here because it'll mess up our DCC, and it will not because it has nothing to do with it through the track power. So minimal track cleaning was a huge advantage. No power to the rails, that's another advantage. Less wiring. I like to get the guys that are just starting to think about doing a layout and talk to them about, do you like to spend time underneath your layout with hot solder dropping onto your lap? Or would you rather be running trains? Battery power is very reliable. When you're building a new layout, it's really less cost than going through all of the components. And you can operate your loco, you can take it to somebody else's layout and run it there. Major North American suppliers, Blue Rail Trains, Tam Valley Depot, Airwire, which is CVP Airwire, and SCAB. Secondary supplier is Deltang in the UK, although they've seemed to falter because some of their components have been discontinued. They would need to redesign their boards. So they really have kind of dropped off the North American scene of prominence. Dead Rail Online, there's a Dead Rail Society Groups.io. There's a very active Facebook group, Dead Rail Society. Free Rails Forum has some Dead Rail on it, and deadrailsociety.com. So SCAB was developed by Neil Stanton, and it was really the first reliable dead rail system in smaller scales. He recommends charging through the rails and has a battery BPS using a single cell. And it works fine. Tam Valley Depot, they have a DRS-1 radio receiver. They have a DRS-1 radio transmitter. You need one transmitter per layout, and all it does is take your DCC signal that would be going through the track, and it sends it through the airwaves to a receiver. Everything else is the same. You can run them both at the same time. No issues there. Works with all DC systems. Operates on 916.49 and the 869 megahertz, which is primarily a Euro frequency. As I said, they can run at the same time, compatible with sound and non-sound decoders. CVP Airwire, long history with radio control trains. They're an established manufacturer. They've been around for a long time. They turned their attention to smaller scales, and it's very well thought out. They have a multi-function radio, which I will show you. Works with any NMRA standard decoder, and they have three sizes of what they call converters, which are receivers. This is the smallest size, which is rated at 1.5 amps. You can see it compared next to a quarter, and the measurements are down here. Easy to hook up. Battery into the converter, goes into your decoder. Decoder normally orange and gray to the motor, your LEDs, your speaker, and what you do is you just clip your track power. You just disconnect that because you're running off a battery. This is a picture of the Tam Valley, or the CVP T5000, which is a very versatile controller. For guys, when I have people call me and we're going over what system's going to fit their needs the best, I ask them if they want a knob. Do they want to control it with a phone? Do you want to control it with something that has a knob? Do you want to control it with your existing DCC controllers? A lot of guys opt for this, for the knob. Whoops. Need to move something here. Okay, we're going to talk about Blue Rail Trains for a minute. Blue Rail Trains is DCC, and it's controlled by an iOS device, meaning something that comes out of Apple, an iPhone, an iPad, an iPod. Sound requires an NMRA compliant sound decoder, but it can be used what we call in basic mode, where it is a motor decoder and it will control your lights. So you just buy one receiver, and you can either hook it up to a sound decoder, or you can put it in basic mode and use it as a motor decoder. The boards are available in 2 amp and 5 amp. Very small 2 amp receiver is 1.5 by 0.57. I'll show you that in a minute. The 5 amp board is 2.75 by 1.35. They're available both with an internal and an external antenna, which is, the external antenna increases your range somewhat, but not necessary, especially indoors. The app is available in the App Store. It updates automatically. The app is free. And we work pretty constantly on updating the app to add new features. Website is bluerailtrains.com. I don't know why this is going backwards. We'll operate on, the Blue Rail will operate on DC, DCC, or battery power. 2 amp board with an internal antenna sells for $95. App is free. Now, the nice thing, one of the really nice features about this is you can read and write CVs, two-way communications. And you don't find that a lot on some of the other wireless control systems. easy to program, extremely easy consisting and speed matching. It will very easily speed match like an ESU decoder in a loco to a Soundtrax decoder in a loco, which for a lot of people is a nightmare. There's good email support. I am the person that actually sells these through Dead Rail Installs, www.deadrailinstalls.com. Very easy to hook up. Here's your controller, which is your Apple app, your Apple device. Transmits to the Blue Rail module. Power tracker battery in, 2 wires out to the decoder, and you got all your, everything's in there. So we're going to talk about Deltang real quick. It's not DCC. It's 2.4 gigahertz, very small receivers. They can operate on 7.4 volt batteries or 2S. Inexpensive system with a controller sells for about $150. Will not control sound decoders because it is not DCC. So there's no CVs. It'll make your train run forward and backwards and control your lights. There, at the present time that I have found, is really no North American support. They will ship directly from the UK. But as I said before, on some of their receivers that are used in model trains, they also do a lot with model airplanes. The components have become obsolete, and they either have to redo them or drop the line. So once again, pretty easy. Charge socket, battery, switch. Here's the receiver, motor. Simple as all get out. Battery info. And I realize I'm going through this pretty quick, and we'll get into the questions and discussions here in a couple minutes. I recommend using the smallest battery possible. I ran into a guy once at the narrow gauge convention up in Seattle, and he had a battery that was the size of a brick, literally. He goes, look at this battery. And I said, well, what do you possibly put that? Oh, I use it in G scale. I said, really? Why do you need such a big battery? Well, I only have to recharge it once a year. And I said, so you sell these, right? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, how do you ship them? I just put them in the mail. I said, I paused for a second. I said, let me ask you a question. When you're sitting on an airplane, would you like one of these underneath your seat? Well, no. And I said that if you get caught shipping these things, your ass is going to be grass, because you're shipping bombs, literally. I said, they need to go surface. And anyway, I never saw him again, never heard from him. Don't know if he's still in business, but it was crazy. Now, charging a battery is no big deal. That's why I say use the smallest battery possible. Use what will fit. Also use a battery that has a protection circuit in it, meaning no RC batteries. They do not have protection circuits in them. The batteries I use are commercial grade medical quality batteries. The protection circuit controls an overcharge, controls a short circuit. If something nasty happens and you have a short circuit, instantly cuts it off, so the battery's not still discharging. And most important for us, it has a low voltage cutoff, and it cuts it off at 3 volts per cell. If you take your batteries down to nothing, you will permanently damage them. 3 volts per cell, their batteries will last for years. And that's why one of the reasons, well, there are many reasons I say don't use RC cells. They're low quality. They're made in factories that are not very high tech, and there's no protection. People will regard this device. Yes.
How do I know if it's an RC battery?
It'll say something stupid, some stupid RC name or high fly or something like that on it. And it will usually have a second set of wires coming out the front with a little connector on it that shows that you're supposed to plug into what is quote unquote balance charge. Because these batteries are so poor quality, they're so out of balance coming from the factory, and every time you run them, they go out of balance. So you need to balance them. Otherwise, your pack will die a premature death. Which to a lot of the RC guys, they don't really care because they're not paying anything for these batteries. They just drop them in the trash on the way out of the flying field. But with the batteries I have, they're more expensive, they're higher quality, and they will cut off at 3 volts per cell, which will make them last for years.
Does this matter what you're saying, regardless of the type of battery? Lithium, or is that true for
This
all
is
battery
lithium.
types?
I'm talking about lithium.
Okay.
Yeah. Nickel hydride and NiCad, which are still used in certain applications, they don't develop memory. They do develop memory. They're not flammable. They're pretty safe. They don't explode. All of that kind of nifty stuff. But we primarily are using lithium polymer and lithium ion because their energy density is so much greater than NiCad or nickel hydride. They don't take up much space.
Now, is it possible to add the appropriate electronics to an RC pack, or it's just better to go the other way?
No, it's not. Because for one thing, you cannot buy the proper size protection modules. You can buy protection modules on eBay, but they're not going to fit properly, and they're going to take up more space than what it's worth. The other thing is that the quality of the cells used in RC packs is so poor, you need to balance them.
Gotcha, thank you.
When I used to do factory surveys in China, my colleagues and I would go in and we would wait in the lobby for whoever the honcho was that was going to come out and give us the tour. And we look around, and if we saw an RC car, a poster, a body, anything to do with RC, we would know that we would not be doing business with that factory because they would not have invested in the machines and production processes that they would need to have consistent quality packs. And so
Pete, can you give a short explanation of what balancing is and why you do it?
Yes, sure. Good question. Yeah. Okay. So these let me get out of the screen. Let me stop screen sharing. Pause share.
Up top.
Yeah, it's up there somewhere.
Yeah, it should be a red button that says stop share.
Stop share. There it is. Tiny
There we
little
go.
thing. Okay, here we go. Yes. So balancing. When these people would make, when I would go in the back of a factory that's making RC packs or set up to it, there'd be a bunch of little Chinese ladies with their tweezers and twisting stuff up and doing all that kind of stuff. When I would go into the ones that did medical, there would be 2 guys, one guy at the start of the line that pressed start, and another guy at the end of the line that pulled the cells off and put them in a box. And everything else in between was automated. It was clean room. You had to gown up. You had to put your booties on, all that kind of stuff, because dust and dirt were the major enemies. And if they got into your packs, it would contaminate them. Now, there was no way to test them to see if they were contaminated or not. How you would find out they were, and there was dust in there, is about 6 months later, these batteries would turn into little footballs because they would swell up. And I would go into some of my customers and distributors, and they'd show me these batteries. They weren't mine, but they bought them from some Chinese outfit, and they worked for a while, and then they swell up, and then they don't work anymore. Didn't catch on fire, no damage, nothing. They just didn't work because they were contaminated. But back to balancing. So when they make these, the level of voltage and capacity is real wide on RC stuff. It just is. And that's because the handmade and variables and all this stuff. When you do it on automated systems, the level is very tight, very tight. So when I'm testing batteries, for instance, if I get more than about maybe a 20 milliamp difference in like if I'm doing a 3-cell pack and any cell has more than 20 milliamps difference, I remove that cell because it's a little bit out of balance. Not a lot, but a little bit. Too much for me. And so what happens when these RC batteries, they're using a pretty high rate of discharges, and they don't all discharge at the same time. So you might end up with say a 3 or 4 cell pack where you've got like one cell is completely discharged, another's got 30% in it, another maybe have 40% in. Another has a little less in. They're all over the map as far as the balance goes. And you want them all to discharge at this and charge at the same time at the same rate and reach the same stated capacity fully charged. Okay, so when you plug a charger in, it's looking for whatever it's going to be the lowest capacity. It raises it up, it gets it there, and it shuts off because it sees that it's full. Well, the other batteries may not be full. They may be partially full. So what the balance does is it looks at each cell individually and makes sure that it is fully charged or discharged. And that's pretty much the short version of balancing. Now, with commercial cells, you don't need to do that because they're already balanced and they stay balanced. And we're not doing high rate discharges either, which has a lot to do with it. Did that answer the question?
Yep.
Okay.
We have Bob Butler in the Zoom chat. How do you program the recorder?
How do I program
the decoder?
The decoder or discharger? I'm not sure.
I'm assuming he's talking about the decoder on the locomotive.
Oh, the same way you do. Well, if you're using Blu-ray, you just do it through the Blu-ray app. Same with Tam Valley. You're using your existing controller that for DCC you program it, and with the CVP AirWire, you could program it through their T5000 controller. All you're doing is taking the signal that would normally go through the track and it's going through the airwaves. Everything else is the same.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So Bob, let me ask you this. Do you use the same battery for O scale, G scale, HO, and N, or
nope.
is there a different battery? Or
Yep. Good question, man. I had to send you a check on that one. You led me right into it. Okay, so let's see if I can do this with my other camera. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, so this is my little 250 battery, 250 milliamps, 11.1 volts, tiny little guy. I use that primarily because from when I'm running stuff, it's just easier to deal with. I got another one here that I sell a lot of all of these sizes of batteries. And if I can get it out of the package, cleverly packed.
That's your 450?
This is a 450,
Right.
11.1 volt, 450 milliamps.
Can I put a 30-second story in here?
Sure. Who's giving me a story?
Lloyd.
Oh, hi, Lloyd. How are you? I thought
Okay.
that. Good. Yeah, please.
Okay, I put a 450, hooked it up to a Blackstone K, and ran it on the bench until it exhausted itself. It went just a hair over 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
And that was just continuous running. Now, it didn't have much load, but even when I run the load, I always get at least 2 hours or more out of running time on the battery.
And that was one of the things that we were really trying to get. That was the number, is 2 hours. And guys say, well, my op session lasts for more than 2 hours. I said, yeah, but how long is your train actually running? It's not running in a circle, so you got some dwell time and some sitting time. So yeah, 2 hours is a good number. And I know the 450 fits real nice in your H13 gondolas, right?
Right.
So this is the 450 and this is the 500, where it's only 50 milliamps difference, but it's a size issue. Okay, you got a little bit more height on it, but a little bit less length, and the just slightly more width. I really look at width pretty heavily because a lot of guys are using these in HO, and I want them to fit in there. But we get some guys that put them like in a dummy unit, and they just set them like that. They set them upright, because they usually have more height than width, and especially if it's a Jeep or something. Here's another one that's an 850. A lot of the O scale guys are using this 850. And once again, it's This would run an HO scale train for 5 hours, maybe 6. But we go by what fits, And here's another nifty one. This is a 14.8 volts. So this is a 4-cell. The rest of these are 3 cells. This is a CVP AirWire battery rated at 3.4 amps or 3,400 milliamps. We sell a lot of these to the G scale guys. Some of the O scale guys are putting them in steam tenders. Once again, this will run stuff for a long time because we find most of the motors that are coming out in anything recent are CAN motors. They just don't draw much current, even in O scale. Even in some of the G scale, some of the Bachmann stuff just doesn't draw a lot of current. So 3400s are a nice battery. These are all made with Samsung cells, so they're quality. They're not some no-name Chinese company. Protection circuit on them. They work great.
Pete, let me ask you a question.
Certainly.
I run brass O-scale trolleys.
Okay.
Can I use the smallest battery you had shown there and run it for how long?
That's hard to say because it totally depends on what motor you're running. Are you running a CAN motor?
No, I'm running Northwest short line under floor motors.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Not a problem. So you're running Stanton trucks?
Not Stanton. I forget the name of it now. Before Stanton, what did Northwest make?
Well, Northwest makes the Stanton.
No, but before that.
PDT.
No, come again. Another one.
There's a Black Beetle or something that.
Yeah, it's like the Black Beetle, except for it's for O scale.
Tenshoto did. I don't know if they made one, but I don't know if it was O scale.
We're talking about magic carpets.
That's
Magic carpets.
I use 2 of them in each one of my trolleys.
Oh, well, the best way to figure out is if you can measure the stall current on them. Now they shouldn't be drawing a lot of amperage, so you should probably be okay.
So it would run it for an hour or so, right?
Oh, easy, yeah. And I can, because your trolley is open, let me know and I can make up a battery for you that isn't the same amount of cells, but isn't of this shape. It isn't high. It could be flat, and you can disguise it somehow.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So you can really design a battery to fit the space.
Yes, lithium polymer comes in absolutely any size you want. Bluetooth headphones have lithium polymer batteries and tiny little things. They can make them absolutely any size you want, from the size that will run a bus to the size that will run a Bluetooth headphone. Now, saying that, yes, they can do that, but they're going to want you to buy probably at least 10,000 cells.
Okay.
So that makes it a little more difficult because I can't just call up my local or my Chinese sources and say, hey, I need 100 packs of this, 100 packs of that. They say, well, we're not going to run them unless you buy 10,000 cells. So what I do is I piggyback on top of other people's orders. My factories will get a hold of me and say, hey, we're running that cell that you're running the cells that you use, and you want to buy a couple hundred of them, go ahead. We'll just tack them on the end of the order. And that's the kind of relationship I have with the 2 factories I work with.
You say you go for a 2-hour runtime, and then after that runtime, how long does it take to recharge the battery?
You can get about 80% into it in about maybe 30, 40 minutes.
So for a runtime, maybe if you would have 2 batteries, so that if you needed more than 2 hours, you would just replace the battery, right?
That's what I do. I just swap out the battery. It takes about a minute.
You can have a battery break during your operating session, kind of in the middle.
While it's sitting there, you pull into a yard. If you need to switch it out, you just switch it out.
What I do in some cases is I have the other one already in a tender or in a gondola or in a boxcar, and it's just a matter of unplugging it and plugging the other one in. And putting it's already on the track, and you just hook the couplers and away you go. Now those are, I'm using a tender car, which may or may not look like a tender, but that's what it really is. And
Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you.
Let me show you, well, let me finish up on batteries here real quick. So what I recommend, if you can, is to make a battery like Lloyd has, so it's removable and you can just switch it out. But some guys that have diesels can't do that. So what we try to get them to do is take your battery and we put a charge port somewhere where you can't see it, and you just plug your charger into the charge port and charge your battery up while it's inside. Not quite as good, but it works really well. One of the things that guys say is, well, I'll just make a charging track. Yes, you can do that. It highly complicates everything because then you have to clean your track, and you especially have to clean the wheels on your loco to get it to properly charge. It will take longer. To me, it's a pain in the ass. It's easier to just plug in, and then you're done.
We got a question over on YouTube. Aberton Engineering wants to know, do you have any N scale packs?
Well, packs don't come in scale. They come in what will fit. I guess to rephrase that question, have I ever done any N scale? Yes. I've sold kits to guys. There is a way to use this 250 battery laid out a little bit differently, and guys have used it in a double stack container, and they've simply widened the bottom of the container, dropped the battery in, they access the top of it, they just take the top of the container off, unplug it, either plug a new battery in or plug the charge in. So yes, you could do that. It's a little tricky because you got your battery in one and you've got probably your receiver in another one. So you're going to have a little train there, but yes, it can be done. For N-scale guys, I recommend that they use a locomotive that already has DCC and sound in it, because then you only have to run 2 wires to the back of the locomotive and it will control everything. So yes, it can be done.
Can you use like a dummy locomotive, or is that too small?
You could but you're not going to fit everything into anything in N scale. There's going to be more than one car or locomotive. But yes, you could use a dummy.
All right.
I tell the guys, if you're running modern, do it in a 60-foot boxcar with a removable roof. A little 40-foot boxcar gondola just isn't going to cut it.
Pete, how hot do the batteries get?
They do not get hot. There's no heat. If it gets warm, then remove it and set it outside because something's wrong.
Okay.
The NiCads used to get warm, and that was one of the ways they could tell whether they're fully charged when they start to heat up. Lithium's not like that. They shouldn't get warm at all.
Pete?
Yes.
Bottom line here, what is the cost to get started?
Depends on which system you use. Let's just take Blue Rail for an example. An HO, the board is $95. You need an on-off switch, $12. You need a charger. I sell a good charger for charging these for $45. You only need to buy that once. Blue Rail, you use it from an iOS device, so you probably already have that. If you don't have an iOS, if you're an Android user, you can go on eBay and buy older iPhones, 6S and above. They don't need to be hooked up to any phone service or anything. They just need to have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You can get those for $30, $40. And then you've got yourself a dedicated controller. Decoder, just a normal decoder, what do they cost? $100 or so. Or if you're doing basic, you don't want sound, then your board controls it. So you've already bought the board. Battery, $40. So, add it up. And everybody's different. So there's not just like one size fits all.
Right.
If you want to go CVP, their receivers are $100, let's say, for the smaller one. The T5000 sells for $159. That is your controller. You need a battery, same battery cost, about $40. Asking me to do this off the top of my head is, I know I'm forgetting stuff, but anyway.
Yeah.
So you can add it up. First time going, $400, $500. Now, how to save money on doing this? And remember this, because this will save you dough. You do what we call power cars. And a power car is simply a car trailing behind your locomotive that has a battery in it and it has a receiver in it. Very simple. These two components go in there. You get your locomotive, already has DCC in it. So you've got your locomotive address already done. You run 2 wires out of your power car into the back of your connector that's coming out the back of the locomotive, and you're in business. Duncan McCrae, that owns Tam Valley Depot, powers his whole layout, both HO and HO3, with power cars. So he only has to have a few power cars to run all of his locomotives. Doesn't have to convert each locomotive. And if you want to get real slick, you could put a switch inside the locomotive that switches either to track power or battery power.
Do you have a DRS that you can put down there next to that?
Yeah, let's see.
Because
yeah,
most of us are already model railroaders. We already have a DCC system somewhere.
This is so this is a DRS one right here. And that's the Tam Valley one, and it runs with an existing DCC system. Lloyd's had really good luck with it. How many, you got a big layout. How many transmitters do you have in your layout?
Well, I have one when I'm running at home.
Okay.
When I'm running at the club, I need 2.
Yeah, so you can, so if you've got a couple rooms, whatever, you just add an extra transmitter, and that's all you really need. Transmitter costs $69.99. This little board is $69.99.
And the transmitter is so simple. It comes with spring clips. You just clip it onto the rail somewhere, or at the end of a siding, and you're powered up.
Yeah, it's real easy, and it's a lot of fun. I belong to an 0-30 modular club in Southern California, and back when we had train shows, there'd be maybe 2-3 of us running dead rail on the layout. And all of a sudden we'd look around and we'd hear all this swearing coming from under the layout. And we'd realize that there was something wrong with the DCC system. And nobody noticed because we were running trains. The only guys that weren't running trains were either trying to fix it or waiting. But that was the only way we really knew, is we would just listen for swearing. It was great. Anyway, so this is the DRS-1 receiver from Tam Valley. This is the Blue Rail receiver, which is a little bit, just slightly larger, not much to it. Height-wise, about the same. This is the CVP 15, 1.5 amp rating. You can see it's a little bit bigger, but not that much. With the Blue Rail, you can put a jumper in here and make it so it is a motor decoder. And then there are these other tabs are for your light functions. Or you can run your 2 wires out here. Red and the black comes from the battery, yellow and white goes to the decoder. That's it. And it just simply plugs in like that, and that's how it comes.
So Pete,
yes,
if I had say a lock sound decoder in my locomotive,
yep,
and I wanted to run sound, it would run sound.
Yep.
All the lights. So will that receiver take essentially all the signals that a lock sound or a soundtracks or
yes,
and
yeah,
and convert those in?
Yes, it does. All you're doing is taking your signals that would normally be coming through your track and you're sending them through the rails. Signals are all the same.
And then the other trick is to fit a battery into into either your locomotive or a car that's very close.
Yes, yes. This 450 battery coupled will fit great in I like to put them in gondolas, a high-sided gondola, and then you just put some load over the top that's easily removable, and you're in business. Or you can put them in a boxcar.
I'd like to be in touch with you fairly soon, please.
Okay, and I can't tell who's speaking.
I'm sorry, I'm Nick, AMS Nick.
Okay, yeah, you can get a hold of me at info, I-N-F-O, at deadrailinstalls.com, and I will put that in the chat.
Thank you.
Pete, the recharging, do you have a plug in the gondola somewhere where you just plug in the recharger or something? How do you recharge the battery? You have to take it out?
Yeah, but it takes, as Lloyd said, he can do his switches out in a minute.
You just pull the load off, you disconnect a 2-wire connector, plug another 2-wire connector in, stick the battery down in the car, put the load back on top of it, and you're done.
So, and that recharges the battery?
No,
that replaces the battery with a charged one.
So the battery has to come out and then be plugged into a charger somewhere else.
Or you can, like I have locomotives where I've actually wired a plug into the back, and what I do is I just take the whole loco over and plug it in to the charger. That to me is a pain in the ass. I'd much rather just move the battery.
I got you. I understand.
Yeah, that's the easiest way, is to just remove the battery. But some guys, let's say they have their equipment in a B unit, they really can't do that because you have to take the shell off. So we put a little charge port in there somewhere underneath it where you can't see it, and then you just plug the charger into that.
Gotcha.
Now, saying one thing is we recommend you use an on-off switch, because otherwise you'll just drain your battery needlessly. And the battery and the charge port has to be on the other side of the on-off switch, meaning the input side. Can't be on the output side, because it'll still charge your battery. It'll just take longer, and it drains energy into the electronics.
I've got a recap question. This is Jim Murphy on how the magic happens. When you signal the controller to increase speed or ring the bell, that signal goes from the controller wireless to where?
To the receiver, to one of these receivers here.
Okay, the receiver is mounted in the locomotive or the car behind.
Yes, yes.
So it's all a Wi-Fi signal that goes that.
It's not Wi-Fi.
It's radio.
It's either radio or Bluetooth. None of this is Wi-Fi.
Radio or Bluetooth. Okay, fine. But it doesn't go through the rails.
No.
So that's.
But if you're running the Tam Valley, you can be running trains through the rails and dead rail through the airwaves at the same time.
Ah, okay. Well, you don't have to clean airwaves. You got my vote.
Yeah. You do.
Hey, Jim. When I'm at the club and we're running our narrow gauge stuff, what I do is I have I take a converted HO SW900 switcher that had the wheel squoze into narrow gauge, and I throw a battery car behind it, and I put the cleaning cars on it, and I run that back and forth over all of the narrow gauge track, so that all the guys who have regular locos can, then just, when we're ready to run the session, just put them on the track and go.
Right.
And,
wow,
that's one of the great conveniences.
There's a guy here in Southern California named Bob Mitchell, and he's a big Digitrax guy. And when he was building his layout, he said, I want to do one dead rail train. I said, well, Bob, you got all this money in DCC. So I'm making a cleaning train. And he did. And he made a dead rail cleaning train that he runs around his layout before he has a big op session, and works great. He only wanted one. But it's been working out very well for him for the last few years.
How much
Something to think about.
How much
Besides to convert his fleet, then, of all those other locomotives, what would be involved in that dozen locomotive conversion when he finally sees the light? Or like I might.
Well, he hasn't seen the light yet. So, I mean, a lot of guys that I've got all this money in my DCC and my wiring and all that other stuff. And, great. You're probably not going to want to convert every one of your locos because you've already put in all the time and expense to make your track DCC. But doing one or two, it's pretty easy. And what I tell guys like that have a lot of locos is use the power car concept, because then you don't have to convert your locos at all. All you have to do is run 2 wires out the back and you're in business. Saves a lot of money.
So is it like the orange and gray wire that you run to the motor, or the
Nope,
black
red and black wire that's coming. You clip your power pickups from the rails.
red and black? Okay.
Yeah. And all you do is hook up your connector, run it out the back of your loco. I use very tiny little connectors, even smaller than these. Little 2-pin connectors. Soundtrack sells them. They work pretty good. They're a bit expensive,
Yeah.
but for size-wise, they work really well. So you got 2 wires running in, and that runs to your decoder where the power pickup would go, and that's it. That's all you have to do.
Pete?
Yes.
Couple questions. On the Blue Rail system, how far back can you go with an iPhone? I have some
6S.
I have some 4s.
It probably won't work because the apps won't update right.
Okay. And the next question is, so you have a locomotive that is DCC and you decide you want to also have it be battery powered.
Mhm.
Do you do it with a switch that converts you said to cut the 2 wires of power. Can you do that with a switch as well?
You can, yes. And if you want to be able to run it with track power or battery power, then you put a switch in.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, when a guy clips the wires to the power pickups, I also tell him to make sure they insulate it, because those wires flopping around in there are dangerous. But yeah, you can put a switch in if you want to be able to go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
How much maintenance is involved in this once you've installed it, Pete?
None. Charge your battery. That's really it. Charge your battery. Everything else is done. I mean, there's really no maintenance.
Okay.
If you want to get the crud off your wheels, then yeah, you can do that. But that's more cosmetic than electronic functioning. So, like a couple of things for chargers. I use RC charger. I use a specific RC charger because it's inexpensive. But with all of the pandemic and the lack of flights from China, they've gotten pretty hard to find. I had to have some shipped in from Hong Kong a week ago, but not all RC chargers are appropriate for charging these types of batteries. You need one that is programmable down to about 0.2 amps or 200 milliamps. Some of those cheap $15 ones are set to charge large batteries like this, and they have a fixed charge rate of usually an amp or an amp and a half. That type of charge rate will cook off any of these batteries. They just won't work. They won't last very long because it's way overcharging them. Like for instance, this 850 milliamp battery, I charge it at 400 milliamps or 1/2 C. The 250s, I just charge them at 200, and I haven't had any problem with them. So I charge them kindly is what I call it. The RC guys that are charging them at 10 C, That's not very kind to the battery, but then it is what it is.
So Pete, I buy a battery and I've got this charger I bought. How on earth do I know how much to charge the battery?
When you buy a battery from me, I include instructions on what the charge rate is.
Okay.
Depending on the charger you get, it has a display and it actually tells you.
Yeah.
I mean, I use a, what is this? It's a high-tech X1.
Yep.
And
X1 AC Plus, yes.
yeah, and it's a really simple thing to set up. It's got 4 buttons on the top, and you just do what it tells you to do. And when you want to test the battery, you hold down the button until it comes up and says test, and then it tells you how much is in the battery. And then if you want to charge it, you push the button again, and it charges it. And when it tells you it's fully charged, it stops charging it and just waits for you to unhook it.
I don't have to worry about how much to charge it. I just press the button and it says charge, and then I just press the button and it does it.
That's right.
As long as you have the correct charger.
Yeah, the correct charger, and all these programmable chargers are automatic, so they'll cut off when your battery's fully charged.
I think that charger was about 65, 70 bucks.
Yeah, it was. And unfortunately, they've discontinued that charger and gone to much more expensive ones. Because I was selling those for a while, and then they discontinued it. So I moved over to a different one called an IMAX B6AC.
And it does the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these RC chargers all come out of the same factory in China. The software is all the same. It's just that the cases are different.
I got you.
I got to tell you guys, it's the easiest damn thing to do, and it just works. I mean, you're talking 2 wires in, 2 wires out. And, you know, it's pretty hard to fuck that up.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just simple. It's just the investment, and a lot of it's the mindset, you know. But once you start doing this, it's like, why am I doing, you know, why am I like wiring track and doing jumpers and going through all this other stuff?
I have a friend out in Hemet, and he's got an ON30 layout, and it's been a while since I've been out in Southern California.
Hey, Balzer?
He's the guy.
Yeah.
And he was showing me some engines back several years ago. And he had all the equipment inside like a ON30 Climax or Shea or whatever.
Yep.
Right, it all fits.
It'll fit in an ON30. Yeah, he had in an ON30 Shea or Climax, you just make the fuel bunker be a little bit higher, and this little 250 will drop right in there.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty small space in there. I mean,
it is.
Yeah.
It is. That's why the critical dimension is height. So if you make the fuel bunker just a, you know, half, 3/4 of an inch higher, you're in business.
Pete,
and you can pull off the load.
Pete, what's the next step with this technology?
That's a good question. You know, people keep talking about batteries getting smaller, and some, you know, I mean, everybody wants something that'll run forever and be the size of the head of a pin, but you got physics involved. I keep getting people send me articles about the next greatest battery, and you know, and then you never hear about it again. And the critical thing to this is being able to mass produce the batteries. How I got involved in visiting factories in China is I was working for a company in Germany who invested hundreds of thousands of euros into making the 2032 lithium battery rechargeable, which was a great idea. And there were some Chinese that were starting to have some success in it. Man, they built these things in the lab and they were just tremendous. Then they built this whole big equipment to do automation, and their rate was about 80%. And you need about a 99% rate to make any money on automation. They abandoned that whole project, just chucked the equipment, took the loss on it, and sent 2 of us to China to go find manufacturing partners. That's how we got to A, go to China, B, tour all these factories and eat a lot of good Chinese lunches. And develop good relationships with the Chinese, because if you have a personal relationship with you, they're your friends for life. And that helped me a lot with being able to do this stuff, is because I know who the good guys are over there. And, you know, when I go to CES every year. I work
Let
their
us out
booths.
there to go get.
Yeah, yeah, because there's so many.
You have lettuce out there still.
There's so many battery manufacturers in China. It's just hard to tell. I used to work also with the Apple battery guys, and while they were somewhat secretive, they gave us a lot of good ideas about how to survey factories. When somebody went to Apple, the Apple guys would just say, okay, you start at your back door, incoming, you take a video nonstop all the way through to the end where you're packing them up, and then you send us that video. And we wanted to see all the equipment they had and all this stuff. And they could tell by the equipment they had whether these guys were going to even be in the ballpark. And if they were, then they'd send Apple guys down to look at the factory. And Apple is very selective, and they do business with very few factories. So anyway, but we learned what to look for in factories, what kind of equipment that they needed to get consistent quality cells out of there.
Pete, let me ask
I see Phil is asking a question.
Yeah.
Yep.
Phil, yeah, DRS, Tam Valley DRS1, I sell them. Yep, I have them. Here's one right here.
Yeah, my point was that on your website, it's not on there.
It should be.
I just looked.
Oh, I'll have to look again. I will check that out as soon as I get off.
So that was why I asked the question, in case other people looked that might be.
Oh, thanks. You know, it's funny, I have a website, but I hardly ever look at it. I better look at it now. We redid it.
I sent you a direct comment. You need to pay real attention to your website if you want to have people come to the website to buy stuff. It's hard, like there's not pictures and descriptions of things when you click on it. Like the charger, when you go to the charger you're selling, you got to text the charger and you can buy it, but you can't click on it and see a picture of it, see the specs of it. So what I ended up doing was copying that and putting it in a browser and going look at it, which by the way offered me 150 people who could sell it to me for the same price or less. So you need to get a web guy. It's the challenge for all of us, our businesses, as you grow it, because your website represents you a whole lot more than you do personally in the future.
I'll tell you about the 150 guys that can sell it to you. There's two versions. There's actually three versions. Two of them don't work for this application. So anyway,
but
I appreciate that. I will look at it.
Yeah, but the problem is that there's no way to know that from the website and say, oh, there are two versions. You have to buy this version from me.
I don't say that because they don't have to. They could buy whatever they want to buy. On the front page of my website, it says, do not buy the V2. The V2 is the prominent one out there, but it will not work for these. So.
The best thing is just to phone our friend Pete.
I went through my business voicemail yesterday. It had 47 messages in it, and 3 were related to dead rail.
Pete, let me ask you a question. You talked about battery technology. What about the other equipment that goes with this? What's the next step for this technology in total, not just the battery part?
You know, looking ahead, that's a we're working a lot with a Bluetooth, Blue Rail type of thing. And, you know, we're somewhat hampered by the old DCC technology because it's got to be able to work with that. So, you know, we can't do leaps and bounds because it wouldn't work for people. Miniaturizing, making stuff smaller, making it, be a bit more efficient. We've redone both the Tam Valley and the Blue Rail boards have been redone a couple times just to make them smaller. They all still work and they're all backward compatible, but we're just trying to be more efficient that way. As far as
I'd-
giant
I-
leaps forward, I'm,
Pete,
you know,
Pete,
I'm not sure.
Pete, I'd suggest that I think the big leap forward is going to be to adopt the other part from, you've done the RC cars, the other part is the drones. And the drones have an HD camera feed they put into the wireless transmit.
Yep.
And if you could basically, even if you left the control side all as DCC, but basically had a video input in the receiver that would feed back up over to wherever the center node is and pull the video off, you now could send that to an app or something. So you actually could have this very interesting way to add video in. I think that's going to be the next big dimension, is how do you add video in? And you can't send it through the rails. You have to send it wirelessly.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. You know,
I think it's going to be, the minute you can plug in one of these little tiny cameras and put it in your cab and plug it into one of these boards, and on the other end get the video out, and it maybe sends up, because it's packetized, you can actually have it go to the cloud and have it show up on your phone.
Right.
I think it's transformational. If you think about COVID operations, how brilliant would that be to be able to have that effectively in your engines? So
that would be great. I guess my question would be, how much space do the components take up? The camera takes up no space, but what about what you'd have to add to the board? Because we're all trying to, you know, keep this stuff as small as possible so it fits. But that's something worth looking into, and I will.
Cool.
It's been it's been
Quick question. What is your website?
Deadrailinstalls.com, INSTALLS.com.
Okay, that's what I thought it was, but I tried going to it and it comes up with an error message.
The link is missing in the N. The way it shows up in the in the chat is deadrailsinstalls.com. There's missing an N. It's installs.
I guess I typed that wrong. Let me go back in there. Yeah, because I just pulled it up.
That's okay.
Yep, the missing N works.
You know, I'm just
Thank
looking
you.
at the homepage, and it has Blue Rail, Tam Valley, and CVP right on the front with links to the pages.
Pete, why are you limited with this technology to the DCC? I guess NMRA stuff. Why is that a problem? Why can't you just bypass that totally?
You can.
We could, but then we would be inventing new technology where we're trying to integrate into existing technology. You know, we could get early adopters that want to do this new stuff and just forget the NMRA, DCC, and you know, certifications and all that kind of stuff.
Why is that a bad thing not to not do that?
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just, do we want to be, you know, early adopters to develop new technology? I'm not sure that's what we want to do right yet.
You might want to look. You might want to look at the manufacturers. It's not necessarily DCC. It's the sound file for your K3 or your K7
Right.
or your GP60 or whatever. It's those sound files. Those manufacturers have an awful lot of money into that.
Yep. Yeah, and originally, this technology, the Blue Rail technology, for instance, this is what Bachmann uses in their Easy app, and they've sold over 10,000 locos with the Easy app in it. So it's proven technology. The original boards that came out, the Blue Rail put out, did have sound in them, but it was just real generic sound. And we've decided to up the ante and take the sound out, because we would have to keep supporting that sound. And every time there was an app update, we would have to put a lot of work into making sure the sounds worked. So we decided to go with using existing decoders with existing sounds and sound files.
If I'm just running straight DC, how do I get sound?
You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you can still run a decoder on DC, but you know, I mean, it's all wonky.
Yeah.
They used to sell soundboards, and you could just use a soundboard.
Right.
I'm not sure that Soundtracks doesn't still sell them.
I don't think they do. I think you can wire these, the decoders to just be sound and not motor, but I don't think they sell just specific soundboards.
Pete, one question I hear is when you have signaling and block detection, and a lot of that is relying on the locomotive and where it is, and it's the fact that it's drawing current is used to drive a lot of that. What do you tell people who have a lot of signaling on the layout when they're running a dead rail locomotive?
Well, there's other ways they're going to have to detect it. I mean, they're going to have to detect where the locos are, because you're not going to get it feedback from the rails like they're used to having.
I think you put a simple resistor across the end of the wheels, like in the tender or something like that, and take care of the, or like on the locomotive, and take care of that detection.
Yeah, if you're looking for proximity, just resistors across the wheels will give you occupancy.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got occupancy depending upon electronics, it sounds like you've got your layout already wired. I'm not sure the dead rail gives you a lot of advantage, but it gives you some.
Yeah, because just, I run resistors in all my cabooses. So at our HO club, we can tell where the end of the train is as opposed to the beginning.
There's a question from the Zoom chat from Harry Primus. What advice do you have for people who have not caught up to DCC?
DCC is pretty well. I mean, you can run the blue rail without. You can run it in basic mode. You don't need DCC. You can run it DC, DCC, or battery. I say invest in DCC. It's not that expensive.
There was a guy on actually a while back that had a product called LocoFi, which is basically just a receiver, and it does Wi-Fi, and you run an app, and it's the phone. I think it only ran on Android.
Correct.
But that was an interesting concept, because basically the only thing you have, if you've got a DC layout and all you want to do is have a powered loco, you could do that and power it off the DC, and you just had to put the receiver in. It was an interesting concept because you could get by with not having to go the full dead rail. The other option is just to go directly to dead rail, and then you don't have to rewire your layout.
You could take this 5-amp board right here and you could run a whole layout off of that. You'd be back to kind of the DC thing, but because you'd be running one train at a time, but you could power a layout off of that.
Unless you use diodes, then you can run two.
Yeah, you could.
Because that's what I do with my trolley.
Yeah. And what do you power it with? What are you controlling it with?
A Lionel ZW with a rectifier.
Okay.
Please. You're talking to somebody that still lives in the 50s.
We've had trouble with some of the Lionel transformers that are throwing massive spikes back into our boards. Makes them light up.
I think that was an interesting question. The idea of someone who's got a DC layout, what are the low cost ways to be able to have one or two engines running on that layout with sound and kind of more modern without having to go to the full cost of putting in a DCC system or the lowest cost? And so dead rail is definitely an interesting option to do that.
It is, because like with the Tam Valley system, you can use the DCC and just do it wirelessly. You don't have to wire anything on your layout at all.
Yeah, but you still got to buy a DCS. You got to buy a brain.
Yeah. Yep.
You got to buy a transformer. And
you can get an NCE power cab for less than $200.
Right. Why not?
But in some ways, the
rail boards in
the CVP AirWire. So for someone who's got a DC layout, the AirWire might almost make the most sense, because you could buy the little handheld controller and use that. and and do this the same thing where exactly it's. I guess what I'm saying is I think there's a lot of the choice may be impacted by the kind of environment you're working in. If you already got DCC, might make more sense. So I think that DC transition's a very interesting because a lot of I end up talking to a lot of guys that have or modelers that have that kind of situation still have DC.
So with the air wire, what do I need other than that black box with the big silver knob?
You need that, you need a receiver like that.
Yeah.
And you need a battery and an on-off switch.
Okay, so it's all in the handheld.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like the big hammerheads.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. For my controllers, I have a rheostat and an on-off switch, and I use a diode so that I can run 2 trolleys, one from each hand. So to go to battery power now, I got to have a battery. I've got to have one of the little things with the wires coming out. Can I still use my controllers? What else do I need?
You can use a ZW. If you're doing the blue rail, you can use a ZW because the receiver will connect with your one side of your ZW or the other side.
And my 2 handmade controllers that I'm using now, I could still use those?
I don't know what you mean by handmade controllers.
It's all it's got in it is a rheostat to control the power.
Probably not, but your ZW would work.
The ZW could work to power the rail. And that's it.
But not power. It could power the rail. So forget the ZW, because if I'm running blue rail, if I'm running dead rail, that power.
Oh, you don't need that. Yeah.
That powers my trolleys, right?
Right.
So now I've got power in my trolleys through my magic carpets, and I don't have a controller then that I can use, right? I'd have to buy 2 of those controllers.
You can buy one. If you're doing blue rail, you buy one iPhone, one used iPhone.
I got you.
And if you're doing the air wire, you can. I assume it's like DCC. You can control multiple locos at the same time.
Yes.
With their unit, so you could basically you switch between them. You've got a button and it goes to the previous one, like on your TV. When you go to the last channel, you go to the last loco. So you just click the button, go to the last loco, change the speed, click the button, go to the last loco, change the speed, or it's a stack. So one controller can easily control 2 locos, or 2 trolleys. But what you can now have is you can still run 1 trolley with DC if you want to, and have 1 or 2 trolleys that you're running with the
blue rail,
dead rail, whichever one you choose separately, because they're not getting the power off the rails.
Correct.
And what's cool in O is, I mean, the batteries are like 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot boxes. So if you've got a baggage area with a little styrene, you can actually make it so the battery could actually look like a scenery element in the middle. Now then it wouldn't be removable and you'd have to think about how you manage charging, but depending on how you use it, that could be an interesting thought process.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. And see, I've got combine trolleys that I've got right now. So I can
exactly. I'm thinking exactly. The battery could become a piece of baggage in the baggage compartment, and then you got a place to hide the board, and basically the dead rail is built into the car, the unit itself.
Absolutely. That's why I was wondering about having something on the bottom of my trolley where I could just plug in the recharger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yep.
So then it just becomes a part of the model that I'm building. I mean, I've got it and it's there.
And if you want to get really tricky, you can take the baggage door and you can make that glue that to the face of the battery, and literally just pull the whole baggage door out and replace it with another.
And then replace it with another battery on another door. Isn't that? I'll be darned.
You ought to be glad you had me on. I could see the wheels are turning there, Jim.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you
see.
know, I tell you, I learn stuff from you guys all the time, you know.
I see the smoke rising.
So Pete, one other question. So one of the things that have looked at doing, they've done with the super capacitors and a keep alive is you can actually distribute those. So, you
Yep.
know, if you want, and so I'm curious about, are the battery packs, is it any way reasonable to think about that they could be distributed, or is it just never worth thinking about opening up one of those packs?
You mean distributing the cells around to
Yeah,
make them
distributing the
fit?
cells. I just,
Yeah,
and
I do some custom packs for guys. Like I actually build this black one here because I can't get. I really like the cells. And they have a ridiculous minimum order for building packs, so I just build them. But yeah, I can build them, and I've got cells for all of these. The blue ones are all built by my Chinese factories, but I have cells, so I can build packs any way you want them. You know, so yes, you can distribute the cells around the where they fit and run wires, and it's all the same.
Cool.
Yeah, I've done it before for some guys.
So did the trolleys have battery packs on them in the real world?
I believe they did.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I can put them on the bottom of the car.
Yeah. So why don't you just use one of these on the bottom of the car? Make it your
Could do
regular
that.
battery pack.
I could do that. Cover it with, decorate it up. I could do that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You could even have
part in the
one
track.
pack running each motor.
That would be even better.
Okay, would one battery pack be enough to power two of the magic carpets?
Yes, but I probably would use this one, the little bit larger capacity one than the
Okay.
250.
Okay. I got
Yeah,
you.
but it would. You could use two of the 250s because they're balanced and they're going to discharge at the same time, depending on what the current draw is of each of your motorized trucks.
Yes. Yep. Love it. I love it.
Who
Pete,
else?
thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here. I certainly appreciate it. I know we've kept you a long time tonight, but I sure do
fine.
appreciate you coming.
Hey,
And I'm looking forward to you coming back and talking to us about painting and weathering, because I think
I'll be
that's,
happy to do that.
I think that's going to be great too. But listen, anybody interested in this, please contact Pete. I think there's a lot that I've still got to learn, but Pete, thank you so very much. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great discussion. I love the questions. They were really good questions. People were, really thinking about this, and look forward to coming back. I think I'm on one of your train shows here coming up in March, aren't I?
Yes, sir, you are. You're on it.
So
And you're also giving a door prize in it.
Yeah, I am. I have a nice door sitting outside.
Absolutely. I do want to make an announcement or two. Clark Kooning is going to partner up with Downtown Deco. The last show you saw the building of one of Downtown Deco's models. Well, I've never built one. Of course, with my knowledge, it's either brass or basswood. That's all I can build in. But this one I thought would be really interesting because I was interested in how to do it and how to glue the parts together and so forth. So Clark is going to do one of these in short segments, 15-minute segments. Downtown Deco has agreed to participate with Clark, and I think it's going to be a great series. So that's going to start pretty soon. Clark just made the arrangements with Downtown Deco today. So Clark, thank you so much. Downtown Deco, thank you so much. And I hope you all enjoy that.
Yeah, we weren't going to mention that till Saturday, like I said in the email, so I can make sure that they're all set. But that's okay.
Well, you know me. So anyway, if it screws up, it's my fault. But it won't be. I trust them. So next time we've got something a little bit different. And you're going to hear me talk about a subject that I dearly love, and it's called mentoring. What is it? Who can do it? How do I find somebody to do it? Why should I be a mentor to anybody? Are you too good a modeler to need a mentor? Well, I hope you'll tune in. Hope you'll contribute. Hope you'll ask some questions. And I hope you'll participate. I want to thank you so much for coming. It's been a fun show. We've all learned a lot, I think, and look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you so much again. And Ed, I think we can stop now.